The 2025-26 NFL season is in the books, and those books, of course, are stored in the Library of Alexandria. And it is time for me to reflect on how unpredictable and batshit crazy this last football season was, while also shaming myself for all of my incorrect opinions and predictions heading into the season and through the season. You can say what you want about me, Brandon Perna, host of That's Good Sports, but unlike those other media places, I hold myself accountable. That's what makes me so likable. The bad news is Will Keys and I actually got a bunch of our bold predictions right. The good news is there was still plenty of things we were wrong about, and things that nobody, and I mean nobody, predicted, Phillip Rivers. So let's take a look at everything we got wrong about this glorious season of football after you subscribe. Whew. Good sports. Today's episode is sponsored by Prize Picks and my code TGS. Use that code when you sign up. Drake Maye's got a max discount this week for the big game. That's right, the big game. It's this weekend. Use the Drake Maye discount. We're 25 signups away from our next big bonus here at That's Good Sports. Would love if we could get those before the Super Bowl. We're 1,200 signups from the Uma Musume punishment, where I'll dress in Uma Musume and go to the Mahomes Kelsey restaurant. Now, Prize Picks is rocking with me through the NFL draft. My Super Bowl sign-up goal was my endeavor. Again, we're 1,200 away. I don't know if we'll hit it, but if there's a week to make a push, it's this one, because the big game is on Sunday. The big game. Drake Maye, max discount. Link in the description. Code TGS. Prize Picks. The greatest example of the outlier that the 2025 season was, in terms of me being horribly wrong, is what occurred right before the season started. We knew that there was some tension and posturing in Dallas between Jerry Jones and Micah Parsons. I certainly did not think Jerry Jones was going to be dumb enough to trade Micah away. And we all thought Jerry would ultimately pay Micah because he liked Micah, or Michael.
Michael could bring us a lot of resources on a trade.
And we certainly did not think the Green Bay Packers would be on the receiving end of Jerry's glory hole.
I want me some glory hole. That has been on my mind since we hired Brian.
I was shocked the Packers were the bold team to dish out 2 first-round picks for a splash trade, and then to make Parsons the highest paid defender in the league. I was definitely wrong about that move happening on August 28th, and I was wrong about it being a terrible trade for the Cowboys. Turns out, it was a lose-lose trade for both teams. Micah was incredible, okay? Exactly what the Packers needed. He generated 79 pressures, 6th most in the league, despite not playing in the final 3 games. Going all in a guy, though, only for him to tear his ACL trying to tackle Bo Nix, means you take an L on your immediate return. Now, we knew that the Cowboys' defense would be worse without Parsons, but I think we all underestimated how terrible of a defensive coordinator Matt Eberflus would be in Dallas. Even after the mid-season aggressive move to trade for Quinnen Williams, the Cowboys finished dead last in points allowed on defense. Worse than even the no-turnover Jets. Dallas was eliminated from the playoffs the moment they made that trade. Now, head coach Brian Schottenheimer actually looks like an all-right head coach. We kind of shit on that hire, which feels like something I got wrong. Oh, yeah! My biggest miss, though, is I predicted a Ravens and Eagles Super Bowl. At least the Eagles made the postseason. That may be my worst Super Bowl prediction to date. So, whatever. What's fascinating, though, is the actual Super Bowl is also one nobody fucking predicted, including Peter Schrager.
The Buffalo Bills are winning Super Bowl 60 out in Santa Clara. The Bills will beat the Eagles.
Well, unless you believe that the NFL called its shot with this graphic to kick off the season. Now, here's a bunch of the crazy predictions we did get right, because Will Keys and I, who helps write these episodes, we're true ball knowers. We are knowers of balls. Aaron Rodgers would get the Steelers back into the playoffs. We said that shit. Kirk Cousins would start games for the Falcons. We thought Tyler Shuck was a good draft pick for the Saints. Sam Darnold would be better than Geno Smith. We predicted that. The Commanders would regress. The 49ers would bounce back and win a playoff game. The Vikings would fall back to single-digit wins. Jaxson Dart would start by week 5. Oh boy. We were 1 week off, but that is what we said. Brian Daboll knows that Jaxson Dart is his best and final chance at keeping his job long term, and at some point early on, he will realize that he has to play the quarterback whose wagon he's hitched to in New York. All of that's in our bold predictions episode, okay? So we have the receipts. And damn, we're pretty good. We're pretty good. I might have a future talking about football. Now, to be fair, I also did a video called The Giants Might Not Be Terrible back in May. Said they were a sleeper team. If their most important skill players, though, Malik Neighbors and Cam Scadaboo, stayed healthy, who knows what would have happened. What was clear was Brian Daboll's seat was even hotter than we imagined. The Daboll firing was not a surprise, but landing John Harbaugh to replace him might be the helmet catch of coaching hires for the Giants. Will and I also noted that the Commanders would regress, but that was admittedly a very safe take. They overachieved in 2024. I still thought they'd be good. And even if Jayden Daniels stays healthy through the course of the Commanders season, it still feels like they were significantly worse than many of us thought they would be after making it all the way to the championship round from the 2024 season. Now, we did predict that the Jaguars would put too much on Travis Hunter too soon and he would not dominate on either side of the ball. However, one of our biggest misses was not predicting how good head coach Liam Cohen would be for Jacksonville.
Duval.
The Jaggies started the season 5-4 and then reeled off 8 straight wins to end the season, becoming the only team to beat the Broncos in Mile High during the regular season, and getting legitimate Super Bowl buzz before falling in a heartbreaker at home in the wild card round. Keep your head up, Liam Cohen. By the way, they did most of their winning without Travis Hunter. He went down with injury, but who would have guessed a mid-season trade for Jacoby Myers would be more impactful than trading up for the 2nd overall pick in the draft? It's almost poetic, though, that Jacksonville's new era started with the weird Liam Cohen Duval moment, and then was completed with that reporter praising him after their playoff loss.
You hold your head up, all right? You guys have had a most magnificent season.
Thank you.
And you did a great job out there today.
Appreciate
so you
it.
just hold your head up, okay?
Thank
and
you,
ladies
ma'am.
and gentlemen, Duval. Duval.
Trevor Lawrence was one of the best quarterbacks in the second half of the season as well. I don't think anybody saw that coming. Anthony Campanelli is one of the hottest defensive coordinators in the league right now. Fantasy drafters were dead wrong about Brian Thomas Jr., who unpredictably regressed more than Jackson Duval's bikini line. One regression I'm excited about. And we were all wrong about Geno Smith. We believed Geno was a decent QB who could make the Raiders competitive. Instead, the team he left went to the Super Bowl, and the team he joined ended up with the first pick in the draft. Geno was the supposed ball knower test before the season. If you thought Geno was really good at quarterback in Seattle, that apparently meant you knew ball. He was pretty good in Seattle, but I think what we learned is that Seattle had more to do with that than we previously knew. And Las Vegas under Pete Carroll is far from a quarterback's paradise. Geno led the league with 17 interceptions and flipped off both Seahawks and Raiders fans by the end of the season. I remember Nick Wright infamously predicting the Raiders to be a playoff team and the Broncos to not. Didn't he say that?
AFC West is going to have 3 playoff teams again, and the Broncos are not going to be one of them.
I also believe Pete Carroll and Geno Smith would have at least had the Raiders around 500. I mean, the level of incompetence that their offense showcased with Geno Smith and Ashton Genty was staggering, even by Raiders standards. That's, though, how they ended up with the first overall pick. And I mean, shit, we were all wrong about who the most coveted college QB would be as well. We penciled in Arch Manning as the first pick in 2026. Instead, it's Fernando Mendoza.
What the fuck, Fernando?
Now, I also boldly told you Justin Tucker's 66-yard record was safe. I told you no one had the leg or the scenario to break it. And then Cam Little happened. In Week 9 against the Raiders, the Jaguars' 22-year-old Boy Scout-looking kicker didn't just break the record, he shattered it from 68 yards. He diddled the gooch so hard that Justin Tucker probably felt it all the way in Baltimore, and it probably gave him great satisfaction. Little hit a 67-yarder for good measure as well. We've got the Kansas City Chiefs. I said they'd only win the Super Bowl if Gardner Minshew was under center. Oh boy, was I almost right. Kinda, sorta. My old friend Gardner did get under center in Week 15 after Patrick Mahomes went down, but instead of a Lombardi, he threw a season-ending interception. The Chiefs didn't just miss the Super Bowl, they missed the playoffs entirely for the first time in the Mahomes era. Nobody predicted that. They have a top 10 draft pick now, for Christ's sake. When you get decimated in the Super Bowl by a white corner, it just sets you back to the Elvis Grbac era. We know that now. The Chiefs' regression had to be one of the more surprising things for anyone to witness this last football season. They won just 6 games, and that was with Patrick Mahomes. Please remember, the majority of those losses came with Mahomes at quarterback, and he was playing good, but he did have his worst career day ever against the Houston Texans. He threw 3 picks, completed just 42% of his passes. After Mahomes tore his ACL, they were a complete non-story, the Chiefs, in the month of December. And I think it was a surprise that the Houston Texans were a very big story in the month of December. Now, the Texans' defense being very good, that's not a surprise, but their 10-11 game win streak to conclude the season, a massive surprise to the football world. And sure, it ended horribly for CJ Stroud and their offense against the Patriots in the postseason, but overall, a success for Houston. The Detroit Lions regressed on offense. That is not a shocker. I think a lot of people were worried about that. They went from number 1 in the NFL at 33 points per game in 2024 and were tied for 4th in the league at 28.3 points per game. Now, most football fans had concerns about what losing offensive coordinator Ben Johnson would do to the Lions. To me, though, the difference was down the stretch. Jared Goff actually threw 4 fewer picks in 2025 and was statistically on par with his previous 3 seasons, even his 6 fumbles. Detroit's offense became easier to defend, though, late in the season. Predictable. Their defense had problems again, but finishing last in the NFC North got that wrong, specifically with the disastrous season J.J. McCarthy had. Personally, I was very right in saying I thought the Vikings should have made a stronger push to keep Sam Darnold. What I was wrong about was how rough their offense would look with J.J. McCarthy. I did not foresee the Vikings regretting letting both Sam Darnold and Daniel Jones walk. I still trust Kevin O'Connell to right the ship, but the Vikings are a great reminder that it's never just the coaching making a QB. If your QB plays really well with your head coach, keep them both because it's a symbiotic relationship. Also, they just fired their general manager because Quincy was terrible at drafting, and hopefully that helps get them back on track. Was that something we got wrong? The Vikings firing their GM on January 30th? Yeah, not on our bingo card. Let's talk about the first coach that got fired, though. I called for Kevin Stefanski to be the first head coach fired in Cleveland. Bold? Yes. Correct? No. While the Browns did struggle, Brian Callahan in Tennessee was the first to get the axe on October 13th. Stefanski held on to the very end of the season, one that finished with 2 straight wins, but Callahan beat him to the punch after a 1-5 start. Everyone was pretty wrong about the total number of head coaches that would be on the hot seat in 2025. It was a bit sparse, if you recall. Stefanski was a fringe hot seat candidate. Essentially, we were guessing Brian Daboll, Callahan, maybe Jonathan Gannon, and possibly Mike McDaniel. 4 to 5 coaches getting fired by season's end is closer to the norm. Absolutely nobody thought 9 coaches would be fired and 10 walking away total. The Ravens underachieving and missing the playoffs was a massive surprise, followed by an even harder to predict divorce between head coach John Harbaugh and the organization. I think the boldest football take artists would have picked one of the big 3 coaches, at most, to be canned. this offseason. Tomlin, McDermott, Harbaugh all being out of their respective coaching jobs. Wrong. Nobody said all three of those guys, okay? Maybe someone knew Harbaugh was quietly on the hot seat, or Tomlin's passion for coaching was evaporating, or that Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane weren't seeing eye to eye. But having three of the longest tenured head coaches all on the move at the same time is just wild. But let's move on to my sack king. I told you Trey Hendrickson would fall off and that Nick Bonito would take the crown with 17 or 18 sacks. Well, Nick was great. He put up 14 in the regular season, but he was essentially a bystander to history. Myles Garrett didn't just win the sack title. He had one of the greatest defensive seasons in NFL history. He broke the all-time single-season record with 23 sacks, capped off by a Week 18 sack against the Bungles, where he got off faster than Rick Pitino at an Italian restaurant. His jersey is literally in the Hall of Fame now. Somewhere, Bill Belichick is not. Didn't predict that, though, did we? I did predict that Bill Belichick would do a good job in North Carolina as head coach. Shit, I was very wrong about that one, too. Another coaching hire that I think we were all wrong about was Aaron Glenn going to the Jets. Now, nobody believed he was walking into Jersey and saving that franchise week 1. Especially with Justin Fields as his starting quarterback. I noted I didn't think he was even a very good defensive coordinator in Detroit. But he got that leader of men label, and I was feeling positive about his hire. The feeling was that the Jets would rebuild their defensive identity and the culture would start to feel positive. Instead, the Jets fell apart. I actually think they were the very worst NFL team this last season, with possibly the worst final month of football we've watched in the new millennium. And they somehow still got out-tanked by the Raiders. Having a defense that finishes the season without a single interception is more rare than Phillip Rivers coming out of retirement. I was wrong about how bad the Jets would be, and I have no confidence in their future. Their best moment was Aaron Glenn doing this on the sideline. And they lost that game. That was a game they lost. Speaking of the Bucks, at least the NFC South was predictable. 3-8-9 teams with the Panthers backing their way into the postseason. Again, thank you for being the only thing that made sense in the NFL in 2025 NFC South. Now, I was very wrong about Bucky Irving winning the rushing title. Injury derailed his season in Tampa Bay. Injuries really derailed Baker Mayfield's electric start to the year. There wasn't a clear-cut best running back in 2025. James Cook led the league in yards. He was instrumental to the Bills' offensive success. He had a career year with 1,600 yards and 12 TDs. Jonathan Taylor was on an MVP track for 10 weeks in Indy. Bijan Robinson had some incredible performances for the Falcons, helping them get massive wins over the Bills and Rams. Tony Pollard and Rico Dowdle each had a stretch of dominant ground games. Pollard put up a $161 on a very stingy Browns defense. Dowdle had back-to-back games against the Dolphins and Cowboys with 200-plus scrimmage yards. And if you recall, Pollard and Dowdle were, of course, former Cowboys running backs, a team that struggled to run the ball when they were there, which led the Cowboys to taking a chance on Javonte Williams, and nobody thought Pookie would go into Dallas and churn out 1,200 yards and 11 TDs for them boys. I hope Javonte's resurgence gets him paid. Yeah, Devin Achane, Kyron Williams, Jahmyr Gibbs on par for excellence, but in a year where every key 49er was injured, seeing Christian McCaffrey get a full season of production and net his third season with over 2,000 scrimmage yards was electric. I'm talking unhealthy levels of EMF exposure from an electric substation levels of electric. Now, I'm not going to say that there was a changing of the guard at the quarterback position, but one of the most interesting things about the 2025 season was Sam Darnold, Daniel Jones, and the rise of the sophomore quarterback class. Injuries ruined Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, and Patrick Mahomes' seasons, which opened up the door for Drake Maye, Bo Nix, and Caleb Williams. Now, Darnold joins Tom Brady as the only quarterback to win 14 games in back-to-back seasons, and he's the only quarterback to do it with 2 different teams in consecutive seasons. Daniel Jones had the Colts atop the AFC before he was unfortunately sidelined with a ruptured Achilles, and those 3 sophomore quarterbacks all won their first playoff game in January of 2026. I think Burrow, Lamar, and Mahomes will eventually get back to their old selves in some form or fashion, but they are no longer the unchallenged inner circle of quarterbacks in the NFL. And again, talking about Caleb and Bo and Drake Maye and not having Jayden Daniels in that conversation, very surprising. I really don't think anyone, though, outside of Seattle thought that the Seahawks would take the massive leap forward that they did. Another 10-7 season with Sam Darnold instead of Geno Smith was the ceiling in most of our opinions. Even as someone who thought Sam Darnold got way too much shit for 2 bad games to end the 2024 season, I didn't foresee Seattle turning into not just a Super Bowl team, but the odds-on favorite to win it. Head coach Mike Macdonald probably can't get enough praise for his work in just 2 years, and JSN being the best receiver in 2025 also probably not getting enough credit. The Broncos and Patriots were easily the 2 biggest surprises in the AFC. I think as much as Denver got hyped up in the preseason, it was hard to see them go 14-3, and it definitely took a lot of things going right for them after that 1-2 start, but they ended up tying a franchise record for regular season wins, plus 1 more win in the playoffs before Bo Nix's very normal, very standard broken ankle. The beneficiary of Nix's absence in the playoffs was, of course, New England, who followed up back-to-back 4-13 seasons with a 14-3 one. The craziest part of all of that, not the schedule, but the fact that they went 14-3 after losing a Week 1 game in Foxborough to the Raiders. We saw an obvious upgrade from Gerard Mayo to Mike Vrabel, but I don't know who had them adding 9 wins and outscoring their opponents by 170 points, fielding a top 4 offense and defense, and getting to the Super Bowl in year 1 of their rebuild. The lesson in all of this? Never be surprised when things go absurdly well way too soon for a fucking Boston sports team.
Okay.
Drake Maye and Bo Nix asserting themselves as franchise guys? A very pleasant surprise. Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson figuring it out in year 1 together is something even the most optimistic, like I was about the duo, was kind of wrong about. Now, I did predict that they would start to click by mid-season, but that 2026 would really be their year. I certainly was not bold enough to have them winning the North and getting to the divisional playoff game. They definitely did start to click around mid-season, though, so...
I've fallen, and I can't get up.
Caleb's breakout game was in Week 3 against Dallas, throwing 4 touchdowns. The Cowboys' defense tended to be every quarterback's breakout game, including Russell Wilson. Caleb started to find his rhythm in a crazy shootout against the Bengals that led to a 7-1 stretch down the run that got them into the postseason. The most shocking thing about the Bears is how they won games. They morphed into one of the most entertaining teams in the NFL for positive reasons, with Caleb Williams playing his absolute best football with the game on the line. 2 of the most memorable throws of 2025 were Caleb's overtime dagger against the Packers, which came after his Air Jordan launch, and of course, despite the loss to the Rams in the playoffs, it was his infinite scramble and touchdown to Cole Kmet that we remember. Nobody predicted the Bears to lead the league in takeaways either, but they did with 33. Matthew Stafford having an MVP caliber season at age 37. Definitely wrong about that. Stafford threw 46 touchdown passes this season, beating his previous personal record by 5. He had 12 more than the second place Jared Goff, while also leading the league in passing yards with over 4,700. An underrated part of that is 14 of those touchdowns went to Devontae Adams, who led the league in that category 12 years into his career at age 33. Wide receiver Devontae Adams leading the league in touchdown receptions? Didn't have that. Didn't even enter my brain. And if anything sums up the Rams offense in 2025, it's that 4 different tight ends had at least 200 yards and 3 touchdowns. I'm certainly not going to check that, but I'd be surprised if that's ever happened in NFL history. Everyone thought the 49ers would probably continue to struggle with injuries. Nobody thought they would manage those injuries so well, and everyone was also wrong about how far the Eagles' offense would regress without Kellen Moore. I think we can all check a "we were wrong about Kellen Moore" box as well. He was the last coach hired because the Eagles won the Super Bowl, but it felt like the Saints were also the last job anyone really wanted. They had no quarterback and an aging roster, but Kellen Moore should probably win an award for having the Saints as the most optimistic 6-win team this century. Spencer Rattler was billed as the best quarterback in NFL history to lose his first 11 starts in the league, but when the second-round pick Tyler Shuck, who I said very nice things about in the pre-draft process, took the reins, the Saints won 4 of their last 5 games and are going into 2026 with the belief that they figured out the quarterback position for the first time since Dreweth Breezeth retired. I did try to predict Jamar Chase as the MVP. Yeah, wrong. But I also knew I would be wrong on that one. What I did say was he'd win MVP because he would carry the Browns offense for a few weeks when Joe Burrow inevitably got hurt. Ding, ding, ding! Give me a prize. Half right. The Bengals were predictably as bad as their entire offseason suggested, though. Which brings me to the 2 things nobody was right about because nobody in their right gourd would have suggested it. Joe Flacco was traded from Cleveland to Cincinnati, and he was actually pretty good, and it didn't matter at all. I think that trade was the real reason Mike Tomlin stepped away. He said, "This game is getting too dumb for me to keep up with." Tomlin was flabbergasted by an interdivisional trade for a 40-year-old QB.
You know, to be honest, it was shocking to me. Andrew Berry must be a lot smarter than me or us because it doesn't make sense to me to trade a quarterback that you think enough of to make your opening day starter to a division opponent that's hurting in that area.
Tomlin got to the postseason with a 42-year-old QB and lost, all while Phillip Rivers came out of retirement at the ripe age of 44 to try and save the Colts season. I didn't see a single tweet, even jokingly, predicting that. There's no Simpsons clip predicting that. It's the biggest surprise we've ever had as an NFL season started to wind down, and that's what makes the NFL so fucking fun to watch. I look forward to being wrong every year because it means something unexpected happened. And that's why we watch. Oddly, the year where Will and I got most of our predictions correct, that got overshadowed by all the crazy shit we didn't even think to predict. Thanks for watching That's Good Sports. Please subscribe here on YouTube. Appreciate you all watching along with me this season. It's been a lot of fun. Ready for the Super Bowl, and don't forget, the offseason doesn't really start until May. So keep coming back.
Yeah, keep coming back, everybody. I'm making videos.
AFC West is going to have 3 playoff teams again, and the Broncos are not going to be one of them.